What's up guys, welcome back to the Piston Show. Today I'm in Pattaya, Thailand to drive the Honda EN1. Now Honda has largely been absent from the Malaysian EV segment until now because late last year in 2024, Honda Malaysia actually previewed the EN1, and now though things are heating up and it's likely that we'll see it on our Malaysian roads in the next, I think, 2 months or 3 months at least. And it's not likely, it's almost confirmed that we'll see the Honda EN1. Now the Honda EN1 was introduced to global markets sometime around 2023 and such. But it's been available in different markets, and Malaysia is going to be the latest market to offer the EN1. And it's based largely on the HRV. In fact, you can say that it's the electrified version of the Honda HRV. How is it like? Is it great to drive? Or what you should look out for? I'm going to tell you everything there is to know about the Honda EN1 in this video. Let's do this. Now, in terms of design, to me, it's a good looking car. In fact, I think that even though it's based on the HRV, it's still a very good looking car. It pulls off this silhouette perhaps better than the car that it is based on. Perhaps it's the lack of a grille at the front that gives it such a sleek silhouette. I really like it. And the thing about the EN1 is that it has front mounted charging ports, which you open by pressing this button. So it's a mechanical latch, and you get Type 2 as well as CCS2 charging ports. Now this gives you about 78 kilowatts of DC charging, which will charge this car in about 45 minutes, and 11 kilowatts of AC charging. Now that's what I mean by mechanical latch. Now the 11 kilowatt AC charging will charge up this EN1 and its 68.8 kilowatt hour battery in about 6 hours. Besides that, it has a WLTP range of about 412 kilometers. But we saw a real-world range yesterday when driving this from Bangkok to Pattaya of about 370 to 380 kilometers. As you can see, this is the very familiar Honda HRV silhouette. It runs on 18-inch wheels. This is quite unique because it has this gloss black outline over here, and again, just like the HRV, you get this top mounted door handles. Really cool. Now in terms of design, it's obviously good looking lah. And what distinguishes this from Malaysian HRVs is this new fonts with Honda clearly laid out rather than the old Honda emblem over here. Let me know what you think about this. To me, I think this is quite cool. And you get similar boot space to the Honda HRV, but you don't get a spare wheel. Instead, you get a tire repair kit. Everything else, even the mounting of the tonneau cover, is the same as the Honda HRV. Guys, say hi to the celebrity, Abang Gan. And so that's it. That's the exterior of the Honda EN1. I've driven this car a little bit yesterday, and I'm driving it more today. Now, but before we get going again, let's just jump inside, take a look at the interior. Let me show you the details about what makes this car quite unique as compared to the car that is based on the HRV. Let's go jump inside. Now we take a look at the interior of the EN1. And just like the exterior, the interior too is largely based, almost 99% based on the Honda HRV. Now the ringing sound that you're hearing is just other members of the media that are here poking and prodding around the car, so please ignore that. Now besides what I just said earlier, the key differences inside the EN1 is, let me turn this camera around, this thing over here, this large 15.1 inch screen over here, which to me is absolutely brilliant. Why? Because let's backtrack a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Chinese EVs for a while. Now, we see this vertically mounted gigantic screen in a lot of cars, everything from a Tesla to brands out of China. But what matters over here and what's the distinguishing factor over here, and I think credit is due to Honda, is the software in here, right? The thing about Chinese softwares is that they tend to overcomplicate simple stuff, such as air conditioning controls can be behind multiple layers of menu. You're feeling cold, you have to swipe or rather dive through 2 or 3 layers of menu to do simple stuff like increase the temperature, reduce the blower speed and such. But with over here, because the air conditioning controls are just mounted at the bottom over here. This is it. This is where you go to adjust the air conditioning controls. So you don't have to swipe through different layers of menu or all that stuff. Anytime you're feeling cold or warm, this is where your finger should go. So you don't, it's just there, which is fantastic. I think a lot of car makers, EV car makers, can learn from Honda regarding this. On top here, this is your second tier. And this is all your key controls for the car, including entertainment like FM and such, right? So this is where you get your trip computer, you get your volume button, a dedicated volume button, which is also really good because your passenger can also control the volume rather than you having to toggle through this over here. And everything about the car and radio is all based here. On top here is, as you can see, navigation and connection. So Apple CarPlay, Android Auto is all displayed at the top over here. So this is very nicely laid out. Navigation, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, entertainment, car controls, air conditioning controls. Fantastic. And if you come at the bottom over here, you can, obviously you don't get a gear knob. What you get though are these buttons over here that control the car. This is parking, reverse, neutral, drive. Easily, very easy accessible. Your drive modes, you get 3 drive modes, Sport, Normal and Econ, electronic parking brake and brake holder. Of course, very deep cup holders as well, storage space and such. Everything else about the interior of the EN1 is similar to the HRV, but there's another key distinguishing factor, and that is this, the digital instrument cluster. But this, I gotta say, is somewhat similar to the Chinese EVs, because in typical EV fashion, it tends to give you too much information. Average fuel consumption, which you can change over here, and I wonder if I can change this. Yes, you can change it to energy consumption, or you can just change it to no content. Let's see how that looks like. Simplified, nice, better, but still it gives you your range, your power consumption, your battery percentage, your exterior temperature and all of that. So this is a simplified readout, which is brilliant. And because I just don't like too much information being fed back to me when I'm driving. You know, if I want to look at something, for example, if I want to know the speed and time, I like to be able to just select it and look at it. I don't like to be force-fed stuff like that. And then you get your air conditioning controls over here, manual air conditioning controls, none of that overly complicated electronic air conditioning vents. Silly stuff. This is just simple, straightforward stuff, just the way it should be. Car makers tend to reinvent the wheel sometimes, and Tesla and a lot of Chinese car makers are guilty of that. Now this is your air conditioning diffuser. If you don't want cold air to be blown to your face, you put it this way, and the air is blown out from the side vents over here and away from your face. On a hot day, you can just have it blown to your face, or you can just turn it off altogether. Nice blue and white stitching. The quality feels good. Now the other thing over here are the seats. Now they look somewhat similar to the HRV and yet different. You get this white outline around the seats. It looks very elegant, very comfortable. But for the passenger, you get a manually adjustable seat, where else for the driver, you get an electronic seat. So this is one of the better interiors for an EV. I think this is quite nice, the way it's set out. I also like that the fact that the center console is laid down low, so which means you can rest your knee and just sort of sit sprawled out a little bit. And there are a lot of things that I like about the interior of the Honda EN1. We're going to take it for a drive now, but before that, I'd just like to show you the back seats. Let's go. So I got to say that because the back seats of the car, the floor of the back seat is flat, right? It's an EV. So what this means is that, let me turn this camera around. It's quite flat. Look at that. There's no transmission tunnel. There's nothing of that sort. I can't remember whether the HRV had a transmission tunnel. It's a front wheel drive, so I guess not. But now, sitting in the car, the good thing is you get lots of legroom. This is really good. And the backrest is just nicely, the recline is just spot on as well. I like it. You also get stuff like ISOFIX mounts and such, and twin air conditioning vents, as well as 2 USB Type-C ports down at the bottom over there. Now, before we go for a drive, here is another look at the interior of the Honda EN1. Simple, straightforward stuff, not complicated, just very well thought out, the way a car should be. So the ultimate question when it comes to the Honda EN1 is, how does it drive? So you see, we've been sort of bombarded by EVs from China, so naturally that is the benchmark, because we've driven so many cars from China, and I'm sure you, as the regular guy at home just looking to buy an EV and wondering which one you should spend your money on, naturally you would probably ask, should I buy a Chinese EV? Well, I'm here to tell you that the Honda EN1 drives perfectly fine. In fact, I really like the way the EN1 drives. The things that I like about it are perhaps the way the suspension feels. It feels very much like that of an internal combustion engine, a car with an internal combustion engine, I mean. So you get McPherson struts and a torsion beams suspension setup, which again is a very familiar setup. And what that ultimately results in is a ride quality that is quite familiar. So we are here in Thailand, as I've mentioned, and we are, of course, sharing notes with all of the other automotive journalists that are here with us, and almost everyone agrees that it's a nice car. Ultimately, it all comes down to the pricing, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But for now, the way that the car drives is actually quite nice. Now, Chinese cars tend to be a little bit on the softer side of the suspension paradigm, so to speak. This, though, is just smack bang in the middle between firm and soft. And what that tells you is that you get to connect with the car. You get
please follow our
that's the walkie-talkie telling us.
Might not connect with our route, so please follow the lead path.
Sorry guys, that was a lead car telling us where we need to go. We are currently driving from Bangkok to Pattaya, roughly slightly over 200 kilometers, and a lot of highway drives. We got stuck in traffic earlier, typical Bangkok traffic, and right now this is a 4-lane highway plagued by heavy vehicles, but we were able to carry speeds of between 100 to 120 kilometers per hour. The speed limit is ultimately 120 kilometers per hour. Anyway, back to my point that the suspension is just nice. You get to connect with the car and it tells you exactly what is happening. Now, the thing about softer suspension, I know a lot of you prefer softer suspension because it absorbs everything, which is fine, but personally I like something a little bit firmer because I get to feel what the road is doing, especially when I'm driving. If I want softer suspension, well, I probably want to sit down at the back, being driven and such. But the thing about softer suspension is that if it's not tuned right, you tend to wobble around, which, having driven quite a few Chinese EVs, I really don't like it. I prefer something which tells me what the road is doing, and that's what I get with the Honda EN1. So besides that though, power delivery, well, the thing about EVs is that power delivery sometimes can be snappy. Right? The accelerator sort of reacts almost instantaneously, which is not something that you particularly would want, because especially if you're upgrading from an ICE car to an EV. So you see with petrol cars or diesel cars and such, when you put your foot down, there's a moment of nothingness, and then if it's a turbo car, the turbo spools up, you get the turbo lag and such. So the response tend to be half a second-ish, but not with an EV. EV, the thing is, it's like a light switch. Power is instantaneous. And here with the EN1, the accelerator can feel a little bit snappy as well, particularly in sport mode. I lit up the wheels earlier accidentally. So power delivery is instant. You get 310 Newton meters of torque from 0 RPM. And that's the thing about EVs. However, the EN1 comes with 3 different driving modes. You get Sport, Normal, and Econ in Honda lingo. And I find that driving the car in Econ mode is where this car does its best. It feels really natural now. The accelerator feels very natural. The suspension feels like that of an ICE car. And right now, this is just a very familiar driving environment, especially for those coming up from a car with an internal combustion engine. Now, the other thing about the EN1 that I particularly really like is the ergonomics of the cabin. See, in typical EV fashion, we also get a really large 15.1-inch screen, which I've already shown you. But the thing about this screen is that everything is laid out exactly where you want it to be. Feeling cold? Everything is just a touch away. So you don't have to go through multiple layers of menu. Now, the one thing that I do need to point out though, is starting to rain, so I have to increase my voice. One thing I need to point out though is that the instrument cluster, well, if you take this out and put it in a Chinese EV, it would look right at home. Because just like Chinese EVs, it's telling you a lot of information. Some things that you don't really need to know, but then again, it's good stuff to know. I would have liked a display option that lets me, choose a more basic readout. I just want to know the speed, I want to know the range, and that's about it. I don't want to know anything else. So I would have liked to be able to customize what is displayed back to me. But besides that, I guess you learn to live with it. In terms of how life is like, or rather the driving experience of the EN1, personally, I like it. And this is something that I could live with, because it feels, as I've said earlier, it feels very familiar. I could get behind the wheel of this and probably could live with it on a daily basis. This is something that I really like. Everything that I always complain about, when it comes to EVs, I always complain about softest suspension, which the EN1 has solved. I complain about a steering wheel that doesn't feel very chatty. This has solved it. Talking about steering feel, there is a little bit of buzzing that is being fed through the steering wheel, but it's something that you would potentially get used to. It's not something overwhelming, and it's not something that is unfamiliar either. It's just there. And I think I can live with that as well. Now, the other thing that I always complain about EVs, particularly Chinese EVs, there's a complicated software that they come with. Now, I think the EN1 Honda has nailed it with this large vertically stacked screen and how it has simplified all the readouts. I think everything that I particularly have an issue with when it comes to EVs, the EN1 has solved. So right now we are at the railroad crossing, and I thought this is a perfect chance for me to just gather my thoughts on the Honda EN1. I genuinely don't have anything bad to say about the car. I think the EN1 is quite a lovable car. It seems to do everything right, and I can't imagine what more I would want from the EN1. Of course, if you really are going to nitpick, then when it comes to EVs, there's always the 100 kilometers more will be great, 200 kilometer more in terms of range will be great. But as a package, as a car, I think the EN1 does everything really well. The suspension is one of the key things about the EN1, because that's where I believe the Japanese have an upper hand over the Chinese. These guys have been doing it for decades and decades earlier than the ones from China. So naturally, they have a library of know-how to rely upon when it comes to suspension tuning. And that is what the Chinese do not have. But unfortunately, I think that we also live in an era, or car buyers have evolved into a new era where they do not care much about such things. A lot of car buyers will probably go into the car and straight away think about how big is the screen, and what are the features that I'm getting, what fancy sounds does it make. And I think this is the same for a lot of others as well, that sometimes a car is much more than the size of the screen. It's much more than what the interior offers. It's much more. It's about how you connect with the car. And that's where I think the EN1 does things really well. I think the driving experience is brilliant. As I've said earlier in this video, the accelerator can be a little bit choppy. In fact, there is a very fine point between accelerating too hard and actually driving smoothly. And you can simply dial that out by opting to drive in econ mode. And you get full access to 310 Newton meters, you get full access to 204 horsepower, but yet at the same time, the accelerator feel is a lot more linear. So I think that when it comes to the EN1, driving it in econ mode is perhaps the best. If you just want to barrel down the highway, which I don't see why you should, but if you want to, you can always opt for sport mode lah. Anyway, besides that, one of the things that I was complaining about earlier in this video was the instrument cluster. There was too many readouts, right? There's too much information going on and such. But then again, I could simplify it by simply opting to not have so much information fed back to me. And this is something that a lot of the EVs from China do not have. So these are simple things that truly matter when you're spending a lot of time behind the wheel. And then there's the other things as well, like this infotainment screen, which, as I've said earlier as well, I think is one of the key things, best things about the EN1, the software, how you interact with the software aspect about the car. You don't want something that annoys you. You don't want something that is overly sophisticated. You don't want something that sort of reinvents the wheel. I want the usual stuff. I want to be able to manually adjust my air conditioning vents. I don't want something that I have to, dive through multiple layers of menu just to have cold air blowing to my face. I just want to reach out and do it in like less than half a second.
And that's what I get with the EN1. And then besides that, I want everything to be clearly laid out. I want everything to be easily accessible.
Keep left.
And I imagine that you would want something like that as well, something that is easy to live with. And that is what I think the EN1 has to offer. In terms of suspension, you may or may not like it. I love it. I think it is brilliant. Okay, it's borderline firm, yet at the same time, it's comfortable. It's not trashy. I like suspension that tells me what's going on. I feel these rumble strips. I want to know what's going on with the road. Every dip, every rut. I would like to feel it, because if I want to
4 kilometers.
if I want to be disconnected with the car, I would like to sit behind and be driven. But right now, when I'm behind the wheel, I want to be in full control. And that's what I get with the EN1. But having said all of that, one of the key things about the Honda EN1 that I truly appreciate is just how easy it is to adapt to it. Now, if you're looking to upgrade to an EV, the Honda EN1, the learning curve for the Honda EN1 is gradual. It's so familiar. It's so similar to an internal combustion engine, because as soon as you get in here, everything is familiar. You know, of course, sometimes with EVs, you get a lot of bells and whistles. The gear selector, for example, is mounted on the steering column. So I get a lot of feedback saying that, you know, some EVs are difficult to sort of understand and to learn, but not with the EN1. With the EN1, I believe you can get in here and immediately find it familiar. The thing that might catch you off guard, and I've said this a couple of times throughout this video, is the accelerator pedal. And there's obviously a solution to that, as I've already pointed out. Just drive it in econ mode, and it is as simple as it gets. Now, it's very gradual, it's very linear, and the learning curve to learn how to drive an EV with the Honda EN1, it's again very simple, straightforward car. Now, this is not just as simple removing the engine and plonking in an electric motor and connecting it to batteries placed underneath the chassis. Honda has done elaborate work, because the way that the suspension feels, you know that they've paid a lot of attention to tuning this suspension. Now, the EN1 is roughly about 200 kilos, slightly more, give and take, heavier than the equivalent, the internal combustion equivalent. So you can't just make a car that is 200 kilos heavier and expect the suspension to behave in the same way. So that's why that when you get into the EN1, you feel all of this. It comes together very nicely, and you connect with the car. I've said this a number of times already, that the steering wheel feels alive, the suspension tells you everything, the accelerator is easy to modulate, particularly in econ mode. In sport mode, it just lights up the tires a bit too quickly, and then it just comes together very nicely in an easy to live with package. I'm very excited for Honda Malaysia and for the Honda EN1, but at the same time, I'm also quite nervous for them. So it's been a great couple of days with the Honda EN1, and in all honesty, I'm very excited for Honda Malaysia. I think the car by itself has proven that it's everything that you would need in an EV. Like I've said, it drives really well. It has all the features that you want, all the safety features that you would want in an EV. And I think even the new vertically stacked infotainment screen has completely nailed it. I like how everything is so properly laid out. There's no complicated software. Everything is just proper. But at the same time, as excited as I am for Honda Malaysia, at the same time, I'm also quite nervous for them, because I genuinely and honestly want this car to do well. I want it to be well accepted by Malaysians.
But the truth of the matter here is, guys, that the odds are stacked against it in terms of pricing. Of course, this is speculative for now. Honda Malaysia might just surprise us by pricing this at a unbelievable 140, 150k, but it's unlikely that will happen. If it happens, I'll be super excited for this car. But it's unlikely because here in Thailand, it's priced at about 1.5 million baht, which means that it's close to 200,000 ringgit. So even if Honda Malaysia were to price it at about 170, 180,000 ringgit, that is BYD territory, BYD Sea Lion, the Seal, and perhaps even those that are willing to spend a little bit more might just be curious about Teslas. But as a car, the Honda EN1, in all honesty, is quite brilliant. It has, as I've said and I've repeated many times throughout this video, it has almost everything that you would want. And what I really like and what this Honda EN1 has that the other Chinese EVs do not have is proper poise. It's a really nice driving experience. The suspension is well sorted. It's a very nice balance between comfort as well as control. It is a car that you need to drive to appreciate. So let me turn this video around. So it has everything. I like the way it drives, and if you're curious about the EN1, then I suggest that you take it out for a drive because it is quite nice. There are even some questions about the placement of the charging ports. But then again, I think this is something that only time will tell how Honda actually deals with the feedback, with all of that coming from, excuse me, that's really loud, with the feedback coming from real world users. And knowing Honda, they will only improve from here on out. The EN1 is a brilliant blank canvas for Honda Malaysia. As a first start-off EV, I think it's a fantastic car to start off with. With a range of roughly about 370, 380 kilometers real world range, I think that's good enough. As an urban solution, it's fantastic. And with the rise, with more and more charging ports being established around Malaysia, owning an EV will just be easier as you go about. But if you have a home charger, an AC charger at home, this is a fantastic EV to start off your journey with. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think about the Honda EN1. As I've said, I'm excited and yet I'm nervous at the same time. What will decide whether this is a great EV to buy or not? The price. It all comes down to how Honda Malaysia prices this car. Quite excited about it, yet at the same time, I'm quite nervous about it. Let me know what you think about the Honda EN1 in the comment section below. Thanks, guys.